So after this crazy winter storm, that's why there's so much glare behind me. That's worse than summer. It's just all that uh, sunlight reflecting off the snow. But I'm doing my best with lighting, so be patient with me. I'm not an expert when it comes to lighting. I'm an expert when it comes to debt and bankruptcy. But I wanted to talk about the issues that I keep referring to of the snowball effect of a Trump economy. Now, typically the snowball effect refers to debt, meaning the theory is pay off smaller, credit cards with smaller balances, get rid of that, close it out, and just keep going. Snowball effect till you finally get to that large credit card. What I'm talking about is a snowball effect, how it's going to result in more debt. Now, I just gave an example in a prior video, and I can post that below. And I'm working on a blog post related to that now. We're saying I could have gotten into more debt. I am automatically because of the my car being totaled because of hurricane damage. It's going to cost me like another 7 or 8 thousand out of pocket. But if the Trump tariff was in effect, you can add $4,000 to the same car. Nothing's changed with the car. It's the same car. There's no upgrades, there's no leather package, nothing. And yet I'm paying $4,000 more. So that's what I talk about the Trump economy, the Trump tariff, and the possible snowfall effect where we all get into more debt. Now, there's a lot of things to talk about that I actually had to write this down because it's just coming at us. Talk about, gale force winds and a hurricane. That's what we're facing with all these issues. So I'm going to start off first with there's concern about the cost for seniors program, what that's about. And so, because I wanted to write down specific things to make sure that there's no issues and no misunderstanding. It was Executive Order 14087 by President Biden called the Lowering Prescription Drug Cost for Americans. Now, all that was basically President Biden had issued through his executive order, find a way that we can streamline the process and lower costs for seniors. And what came back was a Center for Medicare and Medicaid were able to get certain generic drugs down to $2 for Medicare beneficiaries. So that was part of the good that came with it. Remember, there was also something that the Biden administration was always touting, which was, I think the exact number was $35 for shots of insulin. Well, with Trump's executive order undoing or overturning that executive order by Biden, does it mean seniors are going to be paying more for medications? Potentially. We don't know yet. We just know that President Trump got rid of that, but it does open a door for big pharma to come in and say, well, we're not under obligated under those numbers anymore. So instead of selling it for $2, we'll sell it for $20, whatever those numbers are. So there's no obligation to continue to follow that. So in theory, big pharma can say the prices go up today. So keep that in mind because again, I keep saying how, if we're getting into more debt, we might end up getting into more debt or our expenses may increase, even though we've done nothing differently other than laws are being passed under the Trump economy. Now, the next thing I want to talk about was it's kind of on the news, but it became an issue with me, which is with AI. Trump is passing an initiative, supposedly $500 billion, because we need to be at the forefront of AI. We want to be ahead of China and everything else. I get that. I love the idea. But I'm thinking again, what does this mean financially? First place, Elon Musk said the funding isn't there. The companies that are involved do not have the 500 billion. But setting that aside, the issue is what if this initiative goes through? That would mean less jobs. Our jobs are going to be taken by AI. So if you're in the AI industry, you're tech, you're developing software, great. And by the way, even uh, Mark Zuckerberg said that Meta is going to get rid of middle level, software engineers because they can already have coding done by AI. So that sounds great. We do need to get in the forefront of this. And that's why I say sometimes a little critical thinking, say, okay, we're going to lead the pack when it comes to AI. How is this going to affect my job? I'm the first one that's worried about it. I don't know how that's going to affect teaching or anything else. So keep that in mind. That could also come back to hurt us. Here's another one. DEI issues. We know the Trump administration is getting rid of that. And this is important. This one I had to write down several things. This program was to eliminate discrimination with contractors and subcontractors, right? Sounds like a good thing, right? We don't want to discriminate. The White House memo came out and said this protects the civil rights of Americans and expands individual opportunity by terminating radical DEI preferencing in federal contracting and directing federal agencies to relentlessly combat private sector discrimination. Now, this supposedly goes back to LBJ. You heard correct, Lyndon Baines Johnson, through the Department of Labor. Supposedly, the order was to affirmative action prohibits federal contractors from discriminating on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, orientation, gender identity, or national origin. This opens the door to discrimination, right? But I'm going to tell you what's important about that. We already seen the immigration raids in effect, right? If the immigration raids continue, which they will, what's going to happen is you're going to have a labor shortage in construction. Every developer has said this already. Okay, I'm sorry, exaggerating. Not every developer, but they will tell you that that's the case because they are depending on immigration to keep the cost of housing down. If we are deporting all these people, arresting them, sometimes I already read there was a few that were minor infractions. And to be honest, it sounds great that you catch a criminal, but critical thinking, what's the crime? A DUI, stole something from Walmart. Is this the most important guy to kick out of the country? I mean, there's real crime, right? Rapists, thieves, murderers. That should be the focus. But this is a big net that they're casting, and they're just getting everybody they can. How many hundreds of thousands of dollars is being spent in one town, if not millions, to catch a few people that have, you know, petty theft type cases and DUIs. And by the way, when I was practicing criminal law, the judges would even say, yeah, DUIs, you don't get deported for that. That's not the case now. So for you criminal defense attorneys, keep that in mind. Actually, I'll go a step further. Sanctuary cities and all that, they're saying they might go into churches, schools. They did go into courts last time. That was another area that was untouched. So criminal defense attorneys, keep that in mind because I used to tell clients back in the day, nothing's going to happen to you in court because my clients were terrified of appearing before the judge and there's ICE ready to do a raid. Remember, there was a judge who was actually arrested when I showed up at the courthouse. They didn't go in the courtroom, but they were basically waiting outside, waiting for this person to step out. So the judge had him go out through a private elevator. Judges have their private interest in elevator, and she got arrested for interfering with the arrest or the investigation, whatever charges. I think eventually that was dropped. But if you look it up, there's even photos and videos of that judge getting arrested, and she was crying and everything else. So at this point, we don't even know if the courts are going to be free from ICE stepping in and arresting people who appear for whatever, a traffic ticket, um, any little nonsense. But here's the thing: the labor shortage is only going to increase the cost of housing, which Trump says he wants to do the reverse. Sounds great. He says he's going to do it by eliminating or reducing the regulation. The number he gave was more or less right. I think he said 25% of the costs are tied into trying to comply with housing regulations. It's about 23.5%. So yeah, that number is close enough. It's correct. But just because you reduce the regulations, the housing shortage is going to counter that. So it has no effect. But here's the other part. With the DEI issue that I was talking about briefly, they want to get rid of all that. Okay, so we understand the issues with how that's going to affect when it comes to discrimination and everything else. The problem is there's already an email that went out saying if you're an employee of the federal government and you know someone was hired through a DEI initiative, you have to report it or you'll get penalized. You have 10 days to come forward. Hold on to that thought. Finally, I want to talk about the Trump tariffs. First, we had Jamie Dimon come in the other day, 2 days ago, and said basically, get over it. If it combats, if it makes the economy better, I don't know how taxes are going to make the economy better, get over it. Easy to say from a guy who's probably worth $1 billion, right? Now, here's the problem. The Trump tariff also is, as I said in a prior video, we're talking about Canada. A large percentage of our country gets lumber from Canada. We're going to have Canada just respond with tariffs to us. We give them a tariff, they give us a tariff. So if the price of lumber goes up, housing costs go up, right? If there's a labor shortage, goes up, which is, I'm not going to say double, but you see what I'm saying, 2 times over now. It's now lumber and it's now the labor shortage that has resulted in the housing pricing go up. So it's back to that situation of what do we do? Do we move forward? Is now the time to get into more debt, not knowing how all this affects? Let's go back to that snowball effect because I said hold your thought on the DEI issue. If You have a job that was that you were able to get through DEI. What's your concern? I'm going to lose my job. I have to hold back on my expenses right now, right? If you're not out there spending money, that hurts the economy. If you're a person that knows that someone was hired through DEI and they kind of went, got lost in the shuffle, you're now asking yourself, do I report this because I have to keep my job? Or if I don't report it, I'm going to get penalized, most likely losing your job. But what is that person going to do? That person's going to hold back as well. That person will say, I'm not going to go on a spending spree. I'm not buying anything until I know what's really going on. And that's why I keep saying the snowball effect. People can say this doesn't apply to me. It will apply to you one way or another. Doesn't matter if it's the tariff that you get hit with or you own a business and people aren't shopping there anymore because they're holding back for fear. The reality is, if people, I'm going to say it again, like I've said, I don't know how many videos now. Chaos creates political instability. Political instability will create financial instability. So we are all facing this situation of, if we're seniors, our expenses, our medical expenses going to increase? Potentially. Are we going to get a Trump tariff? Would that cost me more? Absolutely. I know Trump says the opposite. He's the only one saying the opposite. Would a shortage in labor of immigrants affect the economy? Absolutely. By the way, immigrants spend money, right? I've seen them everywhere. They're out there buying stuff just as much as we are. That obviously is consumerism that helps the economy. But all these things, besides the chaos and the political instability and the financial instability, is all these things will have an effect on us one way or another. There's no denying that. So keep that in mind as you're going forward with, do I buy a car now? Do I do this now? Do I buy a house now? I don't know. You have to analyze your situation and determine, is your job at risk? Is your job at risk from AI? Is your job at risk because of an immigration labor shortage? What could potentially affect you? You literally have to sit down, look into the future, and say, how is this going to affect me? All right. Any questions or comments, reach out to me. I appreciate all the new subscribers I'm getting every day. Thank you so much. And I hope tomorrow we can talk about something else, about all the money we're making. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves and be careful financially.